So, Shirley, I think it would be interesting for us to start looking and to talk about your journey, where it started, and how you ended up in the boardroom. And from that, the experience and the lessons that you've learned that will be useful for aspiring HR professionals out there.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see familiar faces in the room. I'm delighted and very honored to be here. Just a little bit of my journey. It's been a long journey. So I'm not going to give you a long story, but just in a nutshell, I started off as a teacher of English many years ago. I understood the importance of education because my parents planted that seed in my head from a very early age. I just kept on studying. And I ended up in teacher education for about 10 years. And I landed a scholarship to Harvard. For those of you who are interested in having a look at that, you can Google the Harvard South African Fellowship. They still send 5 people every year, all expenses paid to certain of their programs that you have to get into as well. So I was very fortunate to be able to do a master's and a doctorate there, all in education. So when I came back from that, I wanted to work in the education department in the Western Cape. I went for a few interviews. I didn't land the job. We all know what that's like. It was a very distressing time because I thought, wow, what else does one have to do here? But nevertheless, when that door closed, a whole new door opened to me. Now, I didn't even know what HR meant. I didn't have a single qualification and still don't in HR, formal qualification that is. But when that door closed, I saw an advert for a training manager in the newspaper. And I thought to myself, let me see what this means. So it means I can write curriculum, I can do presentations, I can source in training, I can do this actually. And this is when I crossed over from academia and education into human resource management. That was the path that I took. So it wasn't the usual kind of, HR career path that many of you might have walked. So I had no idea that after the training manager job, I would be moving in. I moved into something called a Group Executive Employment Equity at the time. That was in 1998 when the Department of Labor put out the Employment Equity Act for the first time. Some of you might recall. You might not have been born then, though. Yeah? But nevertheless, I held that job. And before I knew it, I was the head of HR in a variety of different organizations and now serve on a number of boards. But what I want to say to you is that, our careers are not always as clear as we would like to see them. We need to have an open mind about what our future really is. And we need to continue to learn, continue to be curious. So when I first landed at Southern Life as a training manager, is anybody from Momentum here? Can I just see? Momentum Life? Okay, great. Okay, you'll remember that Southern Life became part of Momentum Life way back. And they actually said to me, you know what, when I went for the interview, you actually have nothing in HR, you've never worked in a corporate, you have way too many qualifications, so we're going to put you on probation and give you a chance. So this is what happened, 6-month probation out of a 10-year job into 6 months, and they really pushed me, to the hilt in all sorts of different ways, and it was an amazing experience. I had a person there who was head of HR at the time, Abner Moffaking. Some of you might remember him. He was at Transnet as well. Can I see anybody here from there? He took me to my first Institute of People Management meeting. And this is the power of these sorts of organizations like CHRO, like coming to this networking, like learning from your peers. He took me to the first RPA meeting and he said, if you want to be an HR professional, you have to be part of a broader HR network. And these are the people who are going to teach you to be a great HR professional. And that's where the journey really started. A few years later, I was to become a board member on the Institute of People Management. Okay, and that's how some of the journey to the board started to happen. So you can be on a board even while you're working, well, if your company allows you, some of them might not, but you can be part of a professional body. You must become a member of a professional body and join events like this because it's a great learning experience, it's a great networking experience. And then not just join and be a member, but be active. Be visible, put up your hand, engage. This is very important. Those are where I learned my first skills when it comes to boards.
What an encouraging story, Shirley. Thank you. Sandy, if we look at the role of the Chief Human Resources Officer within the board, what do you think is critical in terms of the role they need to play and the value they need to add?
Hi, firstly, great to be here. Thanks, Shirley, for inviting me. So the invite came from colleagues and friends that we have in the industry, and great to see that so many of you are keen on a career in human resources or talent or human capital, because I think the future of our country lies with this group. We often think it lies with this chief executive, but actually it lies with the heart of any business, and especially in our country and where we are today with our supply-demand imbalance for the right skills and the new skills that we need for the future. So coming back to your question, I think around the role that we play, I think I touched on it very quickly on that. We as human resource human resource officers actually have the role to bring in the talent into the business, and therefore firstly to understand the business we're in, whether it's a profit business or a non-profit business, understand what that business is all about. That's our role. Then our role is to understand what talent is that business needs in order to ensure the success according to the purpose of that business and the objective and goal that that business has. And sometimes we think it's only about developing people or only about hiring people. But we have such an important role in actually taking the careers and lives of people into the businesses we represent. And I think that's the key role we play in any business as a chief of HR, to understand the business, to understand the talent requirements, and then to have that win-win situation where we're going to get the right potential fit with the right culture and create the right culture for that person in the human resource to be successful in that business. If you have that, you're going to have a winning formula for business. And I think that's the role we play, and sometimes we downplay the importance of that role. And whether we're sitting as a talent acquisition lead, whether we're sitting in a role to develop talent or to retain talent or to grow a business, that role that we play is so crucial, and we must never underpin that role and always think about whatever role we have, how does it contribute to the purpose and the success of that business. I think that's the role we play.
Absolutely. Great opportunity, great responsibility. Shirley, back to you. I'm very keen to hear about your first day in the boardroom and how you found that.
Okay, so my first day in the boardroom, I think, it's normal to be a little bit stressed out. So your first day as a CHRO in the boardroom is, you've done so the first thing is preparation, very important, okay? Do not underestimate the importance of planning and prep. Don't try to go in there unprepared, because you will be shut down in a second, okay? So that is very important. The second thing is understand who's around the table. Try to have built relationships with those people prior to going in there and trying to sell a new idea that's cold, that nobody's bought into. So relationship building with key stakeholders all the way along your career is very important. You know why? Because you never know where they're going to pop up again. I've been amazed at how many times I've walked into certain gatherings, meetings, conferences, sometimes even interviews that I've been asked to sit on a panel, and suddenly a person that I knew 10 years ago is on the other side of the table, right? So this thing about carrying our professionalism with us wherever we go, and ensuring that we are building sustainable, long-term relationships with people that we respect, and making sure that we've got the mentors and the sponsors who will put us forward. Those elements are very, very important. And so when I got in there, I kind of had some of this in my mind, but I was still very stressed out. And you go through the agenda. At that time, I don't think it's that relevant anymore. I'd like to know from some of you who might have been in boardrooms in recent days. Those days, the HR item on the agenda was right at the bottom. Yeah?
Yeah.
It still is, mostly. Okay? So we need to change that. So at the end of that meeting, because I got squeezed, everybody's presentations run over, and then in the end, everybody's got to leave, and you're sitting there with 5 people out of the 12 that need to rush to the airport or somewhere. You know the story, right?
Yeah.
So I was given 5 minutes to do you know, my little presentation that I had spent blood, sweat, and tears on. And so I think most of you have this experience. And so I spoke to the CEO. I wasn't brave enough to speak to the chair at that point, but I went to the CEO after the meeting and I said, you know something? If the people agenda is important in this organization, then we need to think about how we locate it in this agenda and how much airtime and visibility these issues get. So it took out of me to be bold and courageous on the very first day already to say, we need to rethink the agenda. And so I want to encourage you, if this is a situation in your world, try to see whether you can, you know, get some support to move the thing up the, your HR item up the agenda. And then, of course, there are very smart people in the room. They can be quite intimidating, you know, and there's a lot of intellectual capacity, sometimes lack of emotional quotient in the room, right? So everybody has very strong opinions and it's a war of words and sometimes there are dominant people in the, what you need to understand is the dynamics of the conversation, who's speaking, who's not speaking, who's saying what, who's enabling, who's closing things down, and how you're going to get your message into that space. And it's very important to be mindful, even though you're stressful, you're stressed out, you have to be mindful of what is the energy in the room and how are you going to position your narrative from an HR perspective in the room. And sometimes we can be so paralyzed with fear by all of this that we don't get our thoughts and views out. And I want to say to you, having been on the side of the table where CHROs have to come with their reports, they have to come with their headcount reports, with their attrition reports, with their EE reports, and they get asked all sorts of questions and they get sent backwards and forwards with the Excel spreadsheets. So that sound familiar? Yeah? Sometimes we lose the essence of what we are actually trying to say. We're trying to say we must create a culture that respects human beings. We must create humanizing cultures in our organizations. We must live our values in our organization. Sometimes we can focus so much on numbers that we actually lose sight of what our true purpose is. And I just want to encourage you here this afternoon, do not lose the true purpose of what your function is all about. This is important. So when I went in there with a lot of trepidation, and I came out there feeling like I need to shift the needle a little bit. I went in the next time, I was even more prepared, a little more confident. I had a little empathy from some of the others around the room because I had figured out I need to engage them. And the problem is if you don't have a coach or mentor that can help you, sometimes you can be very isolated in that space. And your voice can be very silenced in the space. So it's important as HR professionals that we understand that our function is of utmost importance to the success of any organization. And that we should be bold, we should be courageous, especially in days like today. Sandy spoke about how complex this world has become, how we need strong problem-solving resolution capability. And we need to have the EQ to navigate all the politics and the challenges that we face. So I want to encourage you to not give up. So I was on that side of the table. I will talk maybe a little bit later what it is to be a board member now, wearing my HR hat on this side of the table. Okay? So thank you.
Just to add to what Shirley's saying, there was two call-outs. The one call-out is relationship building. And do not underestimate the power of that and how important that is. And when you're sitting, in senior roles or even whatever role you're in, I think one kind of thing that helped me, and somebody taught me this early in my career, is build an individual relationship with every single person on that board. So you get to know that person for who they are, and you build a relationship. That's not the networking. Build a relationship and know yourself and what you're good at. And also don't shy away from what you're good at. And the second point is to have a point of view. Now that point of view must be a credible point of view based. You must do all your preparation, and in this day we are more lucky than we were when we started our career journey. We didn't have AI and analytics, etc., helping us with trends. We had to kind of pull all that out. Today it's available to us. So understand the analytics in your company, use intelligence that's available, and based on that, have a credible point of view linked to the agenda topic. And if it's not, you lose credibility, because the day you lose credibility, it's very hard to win it back, because it's like you're swimming upstream. But if you earn it right up front, based on those individual relationships, knowing what is important to each person, what type of question they're going to ask you. Because when you get to know them, you know one is an analytic. They're going to go triple dive into the details. You know, one is just going to get bored if you give too much detail, and they want you to just like kind of play big picture. You know, one is just going to go to the heart. I have this one person here. Your solution is not going to address this person. So what you do, when you're solutioning, you actually solution with all of the points of views that you know each of those board members is actually going to focus on. That for me has been such an important kind of item in my toolkit that I have as a leader, that I always carry forward with me. And some of it I've learned from my colleagues and friends. And then have an HR colleague in a similar space outside of your organization. Like I know there was a relationship, Shirley, Italia, and myself, through the IPM formed, where we've had our own personal board of directors. So in our own personal board of directors, we still do this with each other. We'll WhatsApp each other in the night and say, I'm talking on this, I've got this challenge, how would you deal with it? So you have different perspectives and not just your own. So you can go in confidently and say, I have a perspective, but I know other senior perspectives is X, Y, Z. And that's very important to actually do or have in your toolkit as you walk your HR journey.
Yeah.
So valuable, Sandy. Thank you. Shirley?
Yeah, you know, being in HR often also can be quite a lonely journey, because you're holding some of the state secrets. There's so many confidentialities. There's nobody that you can really speak to about anything. And so having this trusted group of people that you've built, a relationship with over the years, your peers in the room here, will enable you to test some ideas. Now, sometimes things are confidential, you can't talk about it, but you can say, hypothetically, this was a situation, what would you actually do in a situation like this? Have mentors, have coaches, have people that you can soundboard with. And that is why these sorts of events are so important. I hope all of you have exchanged cards and you're going to go home with new relationships that you can call on each other for various things and build up. I mean, we've been going for, I don't even want to say how long, Sandy.
Long time. We're going to say our age, Shirley, if you say too much.
More than 20 years, maybe. But as Sandy says, our credibility as HR professionals is very, very important. Our reputation as HR professionals is very important. You do not have to navigate this road all by yourself. It is, and then, and just to move into a little bit of my experience, sitting as a board member now. So I sit on a few boards now. I didn't quite plan for this to happen as well, but I can give you some of the reasons why I did. So when I finished as head of HR at Standard Bank here in Johannesburg, I had spent 17 years on a 3-year plan, right? Came from Cape Town to Pretoria, Johannesburg, something that Cape Townians never do, hey? We went home 4 years ago, and I thought I'm going to slow it down a bit, and I'm going to repackage myself into providing advice and consulting to organizations. That's also not easy. But then the board requests started to come through. And so I serve on a few listed boards now, on a few NGOs, on an academic institution, on non-listed, and on a public agency board. And it's been fascinating to see the different categories of industry and business, but the issues around people are all the same at the end of the day. The huge complexity, the stresses that people are finding, the massive pace of change, the mergers and acquisitions, the unbundling, all of those complexities, I think that every CEO that's worth their salt now understands that they cannot make a move without having consulted with their HR first. And we need to get ourselves into that position where we have built that kind of credibility that says, I advise on these strategic matters. And I make sure that from the bottom up, from our systems, from our policies and processes, from the culture that we're trying to create in our organization, to the experience that we're trying to give staff, that we can stand hand on heart and say, we are playing to our strengths as HR professionals. This is very, very important. So don't second guess that you're an HR professional and you're a second grade citizen around the table. You are absolutely not. And I can tell you that now with great certainty, having been in the places that I have been over the last 2 or 3 years.
Very good. Thanks, Sandy. Shirley, I wanted to ask Sandy, if you look at the various relationships within the boardroom, the CEO, the CFO, the CHRO, how do you balance the various personalities and the interactions? Because I think as a CHRO, you sort of often in the thick of it.
Yes, that's such a valid one. And I think, earlier on I spoke about the relationships you build individually. If there's one person I would advise any one of you to partner with, it's your finance person. Understand, because that gives you more credibility as an HR professional, because often we're seen as mushy and this fluffy and pink and fluffy, and you would hear that. But when you start talking about, if we do not hire these 10 people, we cannot deliver on this sale or this revenue or this profitability. If we hire at this cost and we're going to generate a revenue at that price, we're going to run a loss, and this is how it contributes to our profitability. Now, in order to have those type of credible conversations, we need to partner as well as do our training in financial management and how you actually run business financials and understand the financials of the company through the finance team. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing is when it comes to the chief executive, everybody has a priority. Whether it's your CFO, because you've got to understand what their job is and what they need from you as a people person and what you need from them. So it's a joint win-win situation. So you build that credibility, not just on you getting from the CFO, but from you giving to the CFO as well, in order for that person to do their job in a very, very successful way. So you make that person successful and the light shine on them too. From the CEO, he has a target. He or she has certain priorities. Understand those priorities. Understand how you're going to make that CEO successful in the business through delivering on those priorities. If you understand those priorities, your relationship with your CEO is again a credible one based on how you're going to use your HR skills and potential capabilities, etc., to drive a very profitable business if it's in a profit-making organization, or a purpose-driven business if it's in a purpose-driven organization, because that's going to make him look good in the eyes of his board. And you want that to happen, and that's how you build, that's how you manage those relationships, because we actually are the kind of the collaborator. Never forget the role we as HR play as collaborators, because you all know everybody is an HR manager. Every single person in the business thinks they know HR better than you do. And that's a fact. I'm sure you all experience that. But when you elevate it to actually taking the people discussion beyond just an emotional one, but more a professional one, your credibility and what you earn in the eyes of all those stakeholders is a different one. And then you collaborate and bring each one together, because you are that connector, that link that can bring it. And I always see this relationship as a tripartite relationship. I would never go to my CEO without my CFO if I actually need her, and it's a her in my situation. What I've also done over the years is build the relationship, like as I talked about the other board members, my CFO and I are actually personal friends, because I know her and she knows me. So she will not let me down and I will not let her down. And we underestimate the importance of that collaboration to make your role a successful one and to add value to that business.
Yeah.
Great,
Absolutely.
Sadie. That's such valuable suggestions.
Yeah.
Shirley, any tips from your side for aspiring young HR professionals who wish to navigate their way to the boardroom?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back for a second, so remind
Sure.
me if I don't answer that question. The CFO, can I just see how many of you have, been able to connect with your CFO on a scale of, okay, great. It's a bit of a difficult relationship sometimes, most of the time. Thank you for that show of hands. And it's a work in progress all the time, okay? There's nothing worse than you putting up a set of numbers on the screen, and your CFO says, no, that's not the head count for September. This is, okay? Your credibility is shot in a second. So these alignments, you know, one source of information, all of these things are very important to check with each other first so that nobody's left embarrassed in that situation. The other person I think that's very important for HR around the table is the group risk person, for example. In HR, we are managing lots of risks. Most of the risks that we face in a business is around the people. People can create huge reputational dramas in your organization. Now with social media, it's in a second, you can have some major disaster that hits the front pages tomorrow. If you look at all these commissions going on, it's all about what the people were doing, who was saying what to who fired who shouldn't have, who didn't follow the process, all the rest of it. So I realized also the group risk, I didn't understand that in the beginning. And this is why I'm just flagging it to you. In terms of the governance of the risk in HR, had to sit with my team and had to say, what people risks are we facing in this organization? What happens if the unions, shut us down for a week? What happens in all of these worst case scenarios? What happens if you see a poster on the side of the road that says, when I was at Nedbank, your bank is a racist bank? What is your response to that as the head of HR? It is, and today these things happen so very quickly. And we can't be flawed, we don't have time. We need to have a sense of how do we actually address some of these very complex issues that we are facing in our organizations today. So you've got to listen out, get the key themes, think about what are the big solutions that you might offer in those situations, and be proactive about it, and use these forums again to bounce those ideas off. So I want to come back to the question that you had asked me. Will you remind me again, please?
I was actually going to say such valuable insights from you, Shirley and Sandy. I was actually going to say I'd much rather that we ask the audience if they've got any specific questions for you, if that would be in order.
Yes, that would be great.
One other relationship in today's world we must not forget is the Chief Marketing Officer.
Yes.
I think for today and tomorrow, and even how we actually position our brands, whether it's your personal brand, whether it's the HR brand or the company brand in the market, especially with all of these risks and controls, etc., and in the world of devices and social media, etc., that person is also a very important partner to have. Don't underestimate the value of what you can learn and how you can have a collaborative, enabling relationship through that CMO.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair comment, and I think, Shirley, you'll agree, it's been one of the underestimated relationships in the past.
Yeah.
In fact, tomorrow there's a specific session that covers that, because I think it's absolutely key.
Absolutely. And also, I find myself, as Shirley says, employees are the biggest risk because they go out and say A, B, and C. You have to dismiss somebody, and they go out, and sometimes it's all not factual. You can go to CCMA, you're going to win, etc. But it's about your brand, and perception is people's reality. And when we try to attract the talent, they say, but this person said this on social media, and that person said that, and what training you need for your people in social media and what they should or should not do. Do not forget about that in today's world. Make it part of your mandatory training internally. And then work with your CMO in having holding statements for all kinds of scenarios. I know I build scenarios on this happens, what type of statements, and then train your teams and train each other on how you should respond, whether you're in a personal setting or whether in a professional setting. What do you say? How do you say it? Because this was not part of our HR training in the past, but it's a reality of how we have to evolve to the new and the current realities of living in the world of digital and the world of social media, etc. It's extremely important.
It's an absolutely key dynamic that leaders today have to deal with. I don't know how many of you know about Glassdoor. Who knows about Glassdoor? So that is where employees say what they think about your organization.
Yeah.
So we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to look and we need to see what is being said. And you are so right in saying that was a dynamic we didn't have to deal with, in the past. And it's increasingly important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi. I just want to know, obviously we know where we're coming from in South Africa in terms of our history, and in terms of female leadership, we're not where we need to be. What are you personally doing to make sure we do pull each other forward and get rid of the Queen Bee syndrome? And the next question is failure. What failures? And I know you've spoken about when you, Sandy, when you didn't get the job you wanted. But what other failures did you guys go through that taught you something? Because I know we can focus on the good things that we've done, and we forget to talk about the failures and what we learned from them. Can you talk about those two things?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so on the gender mainstreaming, it's also interesting to see just the demographics here today and who does HR. Okay, it's just observation. I think one of the roles, at least that I would encourage all of us to play, but that we have to play sitting at the top, is to constantly be putting that on the agenda, raising the discussion, not only just showing the numbers, but how do we create an environment that attracts and retains women and ensures that women get into the decision-making positions, and that their voices are heard, that it's not just a elaborate scheme to get numbers and to tick boxes, but that we actually move beyond that. And so there have been business cases, there have been all sorts of things, and women are the greatest consumers right now. I mean, all of us know that, but the question is, how do we make sure that we are practicing fairness and equity in our workplaces every single day, and that the experience of the employee is such, and your customers and your other stakeholders too, that you are committed to the principles of democracy, or principles of gender mainstreaming, to the principles of non-racism. How are you making sure that you are the champion of those sort of values in your organization, and what are you actually doing to put that in place? So I think that's one of the very important things that we have to do, lift as we climb, as you say. There's also the Queen Bee syndrome that is there, and sometimes as women we step on each other's fingers and toes. But I think that we need to co-create with men a world that is fair and equitable, and we need to partner with people who are going to advance this agenda.
Lead by example at all levels.
Exactly right.
I think to add to that, I put it under the umbrella of getting to equal. And we're nowhere near equal. And sometimes we could be representative of women, but we're not equal because there isn't enough representation at the senior levels, or representation in the boardroom, or whatever it is. And I think, there's the traditional old way we would have women forums and all kinds of forums, and whether it's internally or whether it's externally. And sometimes we just do this reactively. But I think the time is now for us to get to equal quicker and faster by being more proactive about it. And when I talk about the proactive, is firstly to know ourselves and not have any ceilings put on ourselves by people who make decisions for us as women that really don't know what we want, or where we want to be, what skills we want to build, what positions we want, and make those assumptions. I mean, so often I hear women coming to me to say, I'm led by a man. If I want to go home at 3 and spend time with my kids and get back online at 7, I'm not allowed to do that because I'm being led by somebody who doesn't understand the role I actually have, and how do we drive it. And there was a woman recently, and I think I should actually share this, especially when us women have to go on maternity leaves, etc. What happens if you're led by a man, and sometimes by a woman as well? What we do is we say, oh, this person's going on maternity leave. I don't think we should invest in her right now, because in 3 months' time she's going to go away. She's going to be away for 4 months or 6 months, etc. What happens? We treat it as if we kind of pregnancy is an illness. We cannot do anything. We're not going to come back. We should not be investing in. Nobody should invest in myself. And this person shared an example, which I think of what she actually did. And she was on a job in a very critical role. She had a boss who was not married, didn't have kids. So apart from not even having the role of a parent, he didn't have any kids to even understand what it was about. So it's about that transferring knowledge and skills as well to the other gender, because they don't know it. And only concern of that boss would be, I have to deliver X, Y, and Z in a certain time and be successful. What this woman did, went to her boss, she said, I want to let you know I am pregnant. In 4 months' time, I'm going on maternity leave. I'm coming back in 8 months' time or whatever it is. During this time, when I go off, these are the things I'm going to do for this project whilst I'm here. When I'm away, I want to give 2 hours a day and these days to join this and that to keep myself relevant and know I'm going to contribute. These are the people that's going to fill in for me. This is what they're going to do. I'm still going to stay in touch, and when I come back, this is the role I want. So my message is, know yourself, know what you want, know what your teams want, and drive it in a very, very proactive way. That's the only way we're going to get to equal. Not waiting for somebody to do it for us, because that's, waiting for something to happen to you. And that's not what we should do. We're very good at driving our homes, driving our families, driving goals and accomplishments. And there's another thing we do as women, and which is what I've learned from men, and we need to learn more. When we know 80% of a job and we don't know 20%, what do we say? I'm not going to apply for that job. I don't know this 20%. We take the 20% and we highlight it to become our 80%. Our male colleagues, on the other hand, know 20%. They say, stuff it, I'm going to learn that 80%. And I can learn it and I can do it. Why not do that? So do that. And another thing, men are very good. Let's learn from the men. Let's not just say they're so good at this and they can overpower us. Let's learn and take that best practices to be our own. So they're very good in the golf course. What do? They talk about business. We as women, what do? Talk about just shopping. We talk about clothes. We talk about our shoes, and we talk about our children. Start to change our conversations that we have. Let's have conversations on how we build our skills. Which forums are you on? What you're learning about business? What do you understand about business? Change the conversation, and I think that's within our surface of control.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question.
Then talk about the failure.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, thank you. Shirley and Sandy, thank you for sharing your experience. I think it's been very helpful. I think my question is around, going back to when you first started your career, you must have been shut down at some point, even at a board level or a management level. How did you face those challenges? Oh, okay, I need to start off again. So my question is, going back to your early careers and, first time at the board, first time at a management level, you probably were shut down a few times in terms of your strategy, your HR plan. What were those challenges, and how did you pitch HR back into being a strategic HR business partner?
So perhaps just to recap on the question for those that didn't hear, that the sound's not the greatest, is Shirley, were you shut down in your career, and what did you do?
Yeah, I think, I want to just touch on something that Sandy said earlier. All of us have to do something for the first time, okay? Most of us don't have 100% of what it takes. Unfortunately, many of us don't play to our strengths, but we want to be perfect at the same time. And this whole thing about perfection is problematic. So I want to say to you, it's okay if it's not perfect, all right? And it's okay if you make a mistake now and again, as long as you're learning from it. And I think in both of our careers, there have been decisions and there have been moments when you thought you were clear and you thought somebody understood you, and it was a complete misunderstanding. And it was a mess. And you had to find the emotional capability to rebuild something that might have broken down along the way. And I think, one has to be in tune with one's inner self. When you know something has just happened, try and see whether you can actually fix that. Don't allow days and months to go by and things fester and we become isolated and alienated in the way we then have to deal with people. So we all make mistakes. It's a human thing. And this is why I'm a big advocate for how we create organizations where the H in HR is respected. We are human beings. We are flawed. It's okay, Learn as much as you can. Remain curious. If you go down, and you will go down, pick yourself up very quickly. In that particular instance I'm sure many of us have applied for jobs, and we got this letter that says, There isn't anything that fits your profile, right? So what do you do with that letter? You stare at it, you get angry, and you go through this whole process of depression and whatever, and you come out and you say, okay, what is it that I have to learn? What is it going to have to do better the next time? How do I reposition myself? How do I pick myself up from that fallen state and find a way forward, even though there's egg all over my face? This happens. It happens to everybody. There's some people that can take the egg off very quickly and move on. You won't even know. Some of us are more sensitive, and it's quite painful when some of these things happen to us. But it's fine. That's why you have peers. That's why you have colleagues like this, where you can go and you can get empathy. And this is another thing. We need to build organizations where there is empathy, where there is compassion, where there is care. There's a lot of hostility out there. And there's a lot of judgment out there as well. And sometimes it's for all the wrong reasons. And as HR, our role is to look at ourselves firstly and say, you know, how do we build organizations that affirm this kind of culture? And it doesn't mean that we're all soft and waffly, that you're going to get away with just anything, that you can mess up every day and it's going to be okay. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that we need to create organizations that truly care about their people and understand the human dimension and give people another opportunity where they have fallen.
Definitely. Thank you. Can we have the mic for the question here, please? Over to you.
Sorry, I'm just going to be quick. Thanks, Shirley and Sandy. You know, I'm very excited about the relationship that you've kept for so long.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, and it will bring me to my question. We are in an environment, HR has become more competitive. And it's very, very difficult to build relationship within the HR space because you see me as the competitor and you just feel like if, you know, she's going to be better than me or something like that. So what is the advice that you can give the young generation? Because that is what is actually killing the HR profession, to say we're fighting instead of us being in cohesion. So just that advice that, you know, what you used to do back in the days that we can bring into today's generation to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, so it goes back to knowing your differentiator is what I call it. You know, often we look at we do these relative assessments all the time. It's part of human nature. We do it with our siblings, you know, in your own family. I want to be prettier than this one, or that one's cleverer than me, or whatever it is. We grow up, it's innate in us. And it's just natural that we do that. And we need to change that natural order, because each of us has our unique talents, and even your buddies in your team. And I call it our Strengths Finder. Some of you may be familiar with Gallup Strengths Finder. And Gallup Strengths Finder, what it does, it's really, and I'm saying this more because so you can go out and research this, it would make you feel better about yourself and your teams. Because what it does, it takes the talents that we're naturally born with and it clusters it as strengths. And each of us, when we cluster those strengths, you'll find that there's certain things we do and you naturally feel great when you do it. Even unconsciously, it will give you energy. And there's certain things you do, it just depletes you of energy because it's not your natural strength. And we don't think about it consciously. So when you cluster these strengths or these talents, sometimes when we behave, we showcase these strengths in our balcony, so in a positive way, that everybody feels positive about it. And sometimes we showcase it in our basement, where everybody feels bad, and that's what you're talking about, where we think life is a competition, I have to be better than you. But if you know what your talents are, and sometimes even when we're interviewing for talent, we kind of hire the people that are just like us. So if I'm a confident person, I can win people over, I build relationships, and my core strength is influencing. I used to, in my younger days, I will attract people that are influencers. But I'm not the greatest of implementers. Detail bores me. But I don't have people who have the detail, and I didn't respect them, but now I respect them because my credibility is just not on how I influence a solution to be bought, but it's also on how I have that big picture view, because there's some people that are big at that or good at that. There's some people that are very good with building relationships. So you need your implementers, you need your relationship builders, you need your influencers, and you need your strategic. So if you understand each other's strengths and you collaborate, the power of the whole, because you're not competing, you're collaborating. It's a same letter word, but it's different in the way we actually implement and different in the result that we can actually get. We can achieve so much more when we appreciate our differences, versus competing for in our similarities in the role that we have. That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.